Hi guys, and welcome to another episode of Kabir Considers. In this video, we're going to react to Haunted by Columbine. So, Columbine, I believe, was the very first mass school. Reason why I'm not saying it is because obviously that word can get you in trouble with YouTube. So, I don't really know much about it, honestly, but I've heard it referred to in many other similar situations where that has happened. And you got to think of the poor people who, obviously the people who lost their lives, but the people that were spared or that made it out alive, they're going to have just horrific memories of that day. The things they saw, the sounds they heard, all of the media coverage, it must have just been like overwhelming.
School violence erupted again today, suddenly and with a vengeance.
Columbine High in Littleton, Colorado, it has been a horror.
In 1999, two high school students went on a deadly rampage, and the images seared themselves into the nation's collective memory.
One of the worst school shootings ever. 15 dead bodies still being identified.
An American nightmare that too many schools know too well.
Yet how much of our explanation for that nightmare was right?
The entire country was confident that these two killers were two loner outcasts from the trenchcoat mafia who were targeting jocks in a revenge fantasy. None of that was true.
Misguided perceptions of the Columbine shooting continue to influence us today.
What disaster. How do you even prevent things like this? Metal detectors, maybe? Searches? Random searches?
Just Insurance Office, do you have an emergency? Yes, I am a teacher at Columbine High School. There is a student here with a gun.
On April 20th, 1999, two students culminated months of planning by donning black trench coats and attacking their school. Armed with guns and an arsenal of homemade bombs, they terrorized teachers and peers.
They had a couple of duffel bags at their feet, and we witnessed them pulling out what we assumed to be paintball guns that later on turned out to be something completely different.
My secretary comes in and yells that there had been a report of gunfire and bombs exploding. And so I ran out of my office, saw a gunman coming towards me. I remember hearing gunfire, and I remember glass breaking behind me.
I was laying in broken glass from the window that had gotten shot out. All I could hear was the fire alarms going off. And then the gunshots at a distance.
Okay, has anybody been injured, ma'am? Yes. Okay. Yes. And the school is in a panic, and I'm in the library. I've got students down under the tables, kids.
Jesus
Heads under the tables.
We were all crouched under the tables, and we could hear the gunshots getting louder, and a couple times there was a big boom, and the floor would shake.
On the floor!
I've never, ever heard of a situation like this happen in the UK. Obviously there's been, I think there's been stabbings and stuff, but never anything like this. Could you imagine how scared that teacher must have been? I've been a teacher before. I would be petrified. Obviously I'd do my best to keep the kids alive and stuff, but I don't want to die either, I'd be, oh my God. It's just, how do you prepare for something? You shouldn't even have to prepare for something like this. This shouldn't happen.
Oh God! Stay in the line with me. Oh God! The gun is right outside the library door.
They came into the library. Eric leaned under the table and pointed his gun at me. I was trembling under there like a little leaf.
I saw the shotgun, stared at the shotgun, and all I remember is it seemed like the barrel of the gun was the size of a cannon.
As soon as that bullet entered my backpack and actually paralyzed me, shattering my vertebrae, that's when the pain set in.
So there was Eric on my right, and then Dylan was up on my left. And I looked up at Dylan and I said, "Hey Dylan," and he said, "Hey man." And I said, "What are you doing?" And it still chills me how he was just killing people.
Jesus.
The killers fatally shot 12 students and a teacher in less than 20 minutes. Then they turned the guns on themselves.
12 kids died on my watch, along with the teacher. In our lives, You're not supposed to bury your kids. And they were all my kids.
Before the world had fully grasped what had happened inside the school, there was a scramble to make sense of it.
We're getting coverage from 4 stations in the Denver area of a shooting at a high school.
A still developing situation, and one that looks like it's not going to be over anytime soon.
Horrors like Columbine terrify us, and we need an explanation. So even if we don't have an answer, we find one. And we find it really too fast.
2 witnesses that we talked to on the telephone describe them as members of the trenchcoat mafia. These are kids they claim routinely dress in black trench coats.
Kids were watching this on TV, and also it was the early days of cell phones. If they weren't seeing it, their friends were watching it on TV.
Wouldn't surprise me if a lot of parents pulled their kids out of school permanently as a result of this and did home education. Like, I would. I mean, I'd be, especially if I lived in that area, 100% I would. 100%. Especially if, you know, I or my partner didn't work. Absolutely. I mean, this is just, you know, you think your kid is safe at school. You assume they are. So to have this happen?
On their cell phones and letting them know.
They were saying that that they wanted to do this for their revenge. For the school, I guess, because, I mean, they're such an outcast at our school.
It was this little round and round feedback chamber. So when a kid goes on TV and says, oh yeah, they were outcasts, another kid who doesn't really know the killers well or at all thinks, oh, they're outcasts. Oh, I didn't realize that. Then when he's interviewed, he says they're outcasts. So
it just spreads.
You know, you're contaminating the witness pool like that.
Yep.
And speculation about a black-coated mafia and its supposed grievances ran wild.
A gang that apparently hated athletes.
It was all because people were mean to him last year.
The Trenchcoat Mafia is more than just black clothes. These boys were dangerously strange.
In a yearbook photo of some group members that was broadcast nationwide, neither gunman appeared. One member of the Trenchcoat Mafia, John Savage, said there was a good reason for their absence.
Eric and Dylan were not at all a part of the things that we did as a group. They didn't hang out with us. They weren't Trenchcoat Mafia at all.
And he says
Not that I don't believe him, but who wouldn't want to distance themselves from those 2 absolute psychopaths? So they could have been, but he might be saying that to distance himself from them. But then again, maybe he's telling the truth. Who's to say? I don't know him.
Description of him and his friends had little basis in fact.
The Trenchcoat Mafia was like, we were video game nerds. We like, you know, sit around the table and, you know, play Dungeons and Dragons, you know, which is just about the least dangerous thing you could do.
It was a group of friends that had similar interests. Some kids referred to them as the Trenchcoat Mafia, but it was not that it was an organized club.
But the explanation about outcast loners seeking revenge against bullies had the dual advantage of being both dramatic and familiar.
What happened here at Littleton is a grotesque distortion of high school fears and rivalries involving cliques, the in-groups and out-groups that are a part of teen life in America.
Author Dave Cullen spent nearly 10 years on his account of Columbine, researching police records, the killers' diaries, and their lives at the school. He said the boys had busy social lives and didn't seem motivated by bullying.
There was lots of bullying at
It seems like they were just absolute nutters, just psychopaths that wanted to kill people. You know, sometimes there isn't a motive. You know, sometimes they are literally just born killers. You know, look at all of these, you know, famous serial killers, you know, Ted Bundy, people like that. They're just born to kill.
Fine. It was a high school in America. Did it have anything to do with driving these 2 boys to murder? I cannot find any evidence of that.
The killers directed their hostility toward the whole student population, placing propane bombs set to go off in the cafeteria at lunchtime. But the devices failed to detonate as planned.
Columbine actually wasn't a successful shooting. It was a failed bombing. How much more indiscriminate can you get? 2 big bombs to kill everyone who happens to be in that part of the building at the start of a lunch.
Cullen describes the killer's motives as a cocktail of malice, self-loathing, and a craving for fame, Over time, they became something like a two-man cult, bent on making their mark on the world in one final act.
It was a murder-suicide for both of them. For Eric, it was primarily a murder. For Dylan, it was primarily suicide. They took the tactics of terrorists and said, we can do the same stuff for our own aggrandizement. Eric talked about his audience in his journal and whether they were going to understand this.
Where were the parents? I'm sorry, like, are you telling me if the mum and dad were doing what mum and dad should do and spending time with their kids, getting to know their kids deeply, you wouldn't notice this kind of behavior? Because this kind of behavior surely would manifest at home. Like, you would see, like, you know, certain strange things. Are you telling me they kept this hidden the whole time and their parents saw nothing? I don't know. I find that hard to believe.
There was one message observers seemed to take from the event immediately.
School shootings have become a dark stain on American life.
The phenomenon of kids turning guns on their schoolmates is all too familiar.
And it's not just Littleton. We know that now. We've had lots and lots and lots of places.
Columbine came after a string of school shootings in Oregon, Arkansas, and other states. Reaction to the Colorado massacre helped fuel a national movement towards school security.
Parents across the country are demanding to know what their schools are doing to keep their children safe.
Today, nearly half of public schools surveyed nationwide employ police or hired guards. At least 21 states mandate lockdown drills for school shooting scenarios, and millions of dollars have been spent on everything from metal detectors to anti-bullying programs.
When people hear that somebody was caught planning a Columbine, the world knows what that means.
More than a decade after Columbine, we're still struggling to figure out not only what causes school shootings, but whether or not we're seeing more of them. And coverage of the issue offers little clarity.
How old, like, do you have to, like, what's the minimum age that you can go out and buy a gun? Because these two kids, if they're in high school, that means they're younger than 17 or something like that. Surely you can't buy a gun at 17. And if that's true, that leads me to believe that maybe they obtained these guns from their parents or people in their extended family. I don't know, like, you just got to try and keep weapons like that out of the hands of minors, you know. I don't know, I'm just trying to think of solutions here. But then again, you know, you could argue that people that are hell-bent on doing something like this, if they can't find a firearm, they're going to find another way to do it. I really don't know what to say.
Shootings are on the rise in America.
Suggest.
I'm telling you, I have the numbers to show it.
But there's actually very little consensus on those numbers.
Experts say that the number is statistically unchanged since the 1990s.
The number of school shootings in America has been rapidly in decline over the last decade.
Researchers can't agree on a methodology for tallying up attacks. They make different decisions about whether to include non-fatal attacks on schools or foiled ones, or even on-campus suicides or gun accidents.
I think you have to count all of that. Whether it's foiled or unsuccessful, if it's been attempted, I think you should count that. Because what about if it wasn't stopped?
This leads to vastly different final numbers.
We unfortunately tend to judge how frequently events occur by how often we hear about them. And that, of course, depends on news reports of these things happening.
The death toll rises in an attack inside a school cafeteria.
In Los Angeles, 2 students were wounded in an accidental shooting. A school shooting in Texas leaves 2 students injured.
One statistic with a more clear-cut definition is overall homicides in schools. The Center for Disease Control regularly tracks those numbers, and the trend line is clear. While they vary from year to year, school homicides are essentially flat across the decades. They're also extremely rare.
There are over 300 shootings every day in the United States. How many of those occur in schools? Almost none of them.
And rare as they are,
almost none, but it's still non-zero. I think as long as the number isn't zero, you can't be satisfied with that number.
school shootings do happen, there's some evidence that past attacks and intense media focus on the killers have helped inspire future ones.
Song Hee Cho wrote that he was inspired by the Columbine killers attack 8 years ago today.
The gunman, Adam Lanza, was obsessed with the 1999 Columbine high school attack.
And some news outlets are beginning to take notice.
We are not, during this broadcast, using the name of the shooter. Often it seems that in history remembers the names of murderers and not the names of victims.
Yeah, I agree. Don't mention the name at all. Don't give them the fame, infamy, notoriety, whatever.
It's good that school shootings are still shocking because it shows that they're really rare. So I think it's important to kind of keep in mind that there are a lot of schools all over the world where no one's ever been shot.
I could spend my entire life living in fear, wondering when's the next attack or when's the next person going to do that, but that would be it. I'd be living in fear. I would be giving in to what they wanted to happen.
Man, that video really shook me up, man, because, you know, when I went to school, that was the last place that I thought I was in danger, you know? It was a place that you could just mess around, you learn, not just about education that you learn a lot about life and how to deal with people. You're just thinking about, you're not thinking that this could potentially, you know, God forbid, I could get, you know, today. Do you know what I mean? Like, and to think that there's students all across America and other countries as well that live in fear every day that they go to school is just insane. I really hope that everything possible is being done to stop these from happening. I don't know what measures you can take. Yeah, searches, metal detectors, I don't know, the anti-bullying education. I suppose maybe a multi-pronged attack is probably what's going to help. But yeah, we need to bring that number as close to zero as possible. Thanks for watching, guys, and I'll see you in the next one.